This is Catherine, testing in the English channel.
Thank you for joining us. My name is Sara Suarez, Senior Manager of Programs and Operations at Zócalo Public Square, a unit of Arizona State University Media Enterprise. At Zócalo, our mission is to connect people to ideas and to each other. Everything we do is free, and everyone is welcomed. We publish original writing and present conversations like this one. We were founded in 2003 and are now celebrating our 21st birthday. You can find us at zocalopublicsquare.org on podcast platforms and YouTube. So please subscribe for our latest programs. Our program today asks, are the U.S. and Mexico becoming one country? We are honored to co-present this program with the University of Guadalajara at the LéaLA Literary Festival. I now have the pleasure to introduce our moderator, Alfredo Corchado. Alfredo is the executive editor and correspondent for PUENTE News Collaborative. He was the Mexico Bureau Chief for the Dallas Morning News, author of Midnight in Mexico and Homelands. Corchado is a 2009 Nieman Fellow at Harvard, winner of Maria Moore's Cabot Prize from Columbia University, and Colby College's Elijah Parrish Lovejoy Award for Courage in Journalism. He graduated from his career includes El Paso Herald-Post and the Wall Street Journal. He was born in Durango and lives between El Paso and Mexico City. He calls the border home. Good morning, everyone. I found the microphone. My name is Alfredo Corchado, and I'm from PUENTE News Collaborative. As Sara said, the fundamental question today is Mexico and the United States, are they becoming one single country? It's a pleasure for me to present our panelists. To the left, we have Irasema Coronado from Nogales, Arizona, although we see her from the borderline from El Paso, Texas, Juarez. Irasema Coronado is the director of the School of Transborder Studies at Arizona State University. Her area of specialization is comparative politics and the politics of the U.S.-Mexico border region. Her research focuses on women's politics, immigration, human rights, environmental policy on the border. Her most recent publication is a co-edited book titled Children Crossing Borders, Latin American Migrant Childhoods, published by the University of Arizona Press in 2022. She is chair of the ASU's Hispanic Serving Institution Advisory Council. To her right is Anita Herrera, a curator, artist, cultural consultant, born and raised in Los Angeles. Based in both Los Angeles and Mexico City, Herrera specializes in collaborations within creative communities such as music, fashion, and art. With the goal working towards nurturing creativity, community, and collaboration, Anita expresses her work with the intention of initiating conversations around healing and generating empathy. She focuses on the U.S. Latinx market across for independent and client rosters, including Red Bull, Hennessy, Foot Locker, Obey, Goat Group, Universal Music, Latin Entertainment, Tecate, and more. And also with us this morning is Víctor Zúñiga, professor of sociology at the School of Law of the Universidad Autónoma de Nuevo León. He's been distinguished as Emeritus Researcher of Mexico's Sistema Nacional de Investigadores. He is co-author of the Zero Children Moving from the United States to Mexico, the 0.5 Generation. In 2018, he was recognized by the American Research Association, which is the research leading to the transformation of the social context education. Before starting our conversation, we'd like to prepare the set the stage with a short reading from the book that Irasema, Victor, and myself have written on the ideas that we're going to be exploring during this event. Irasema, would you do us the pleasure of starting? I remind you that we're in LA, that at one time was partner of Mexico. So good morning, everybody, all of you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your invitation to participate in this journal. My name is Irasema Coronado. I grew up biculturally in Arizona. It was very common to cross the border 5 or 6 times per day for different reasons. Obviously, that has changed, but I'm sorry that we do not have that openness that we used to have on the border. The chapter of the book that I'm going to read is written by a Professor Marisa de Gerano Fremba. She's a English teacher at a rural school in Louisiana. And she talks about in this chapter the experiences that she has with migrant children. So I'm going to start reading part of the text. There's a lot of challenges working with a population, a vulnerable population. In many cases, lots of our students live in the shadows. They have to lie, having to lie, be discreet, or not being able to share information because they're undocumented, or they have a family member that's undocumented. This causes a lot of anxiety inside of our community. The lack of formal education, living or financial difficulties in their origin country, limited use of English, and poverty are some of the obstacles that they face, that these children face. 2 students, one from Guatemala and another one from Honduras, had never been to school previously and had no formal education. The student from Guatemala didn't speak Spanish. Both of them students abandoned and were working in construction sites. Also, both that have any break of time classify as students with formal education that's interrupted. It's a small group but growing in the United States. Because of the violence in their origin countries and their migration trajectories, some students have also been outside of school for months or in some cases years. Those students have also had higher probabilities of abandoning if we don't create interventions. In my personal experience, most of these students indicate that they are here to work and to send money back to their homelands. Migration officials or the police or immigration politics forces them to come to school even when they are not academically or socially prepared in comparison to their classmates to start their lives as a secondary student. To have these breaks in their students does not allow them to have academic success. In their origin countries, many lived as adults, and going to school was not an option. Another factor that we need to have in account is the trauma that students have, most probably when they start school in comparison to other classmates. And that is where I will leave it to continue the conversation. Thank you, Irasema. Victor. Julian. And I'm going to read in Spanish. Julian, he's bilingual. Julian's bilingual. So that you have an image of what's a fragmented socialization that lives. More than 500,000 that were born in the U.S. are now in Mexico. I'm going to share a short excerpt of the conversation that we had with Lulu. She was 15 years old, young girl, in Figueroa, Jujuta, in el estado de Morelos, state of Morelos, in September 2016. She reached Morelos when she was 13 years old, having lived pretty much all her life in San Diego, California. Reaching Morelos, she registered at secundaria in middle school, and the teacher gave them an exam in which they were asking for faces of national heroes. The students had to recognize those images and write the name of those heroes in a box underneath the image. As expected, Lulu didn't recognize any of them, but she did feel certain to write underneath the image of Cortevo, India, and after Hernán Cortés, she wrote British. This anecdote said that all the members of the family of Lulu laugh hysterically in family reunions where they have been invited since 2013. Well, yes. So fragmented socialization is not the same as a broken socialization. Migrant children, international migrant children that move from the United States to Mexico are not mutilated beings. Lulu is not broken, even though she passed that humiliation in high school when she wrote Indian and British underneath the images of Hernán Cortés and Cortevo. They are children that learn to negotiate different adult world. They're all legitimate. They're families in the United States and then in Mexico, and the schools of the United States and then the Mexican schools. So associated as well with the social circles and local contexts that are changing. These children are much more than just bilingual individuals. These children are binational. These children learn to move between worlds, rituals, and norms that rival each other. They are the members of the generation 0.5. Thank you. Before reading, I want to give us more context. The Mexican diaspora is the second largest in the world, second to India. Most Latinos are Mexican blood, more than 13 million, 3 million. It's every day it's more diverse with migrants from all over the world, including North Americans. From food, tequila, music, the car that we drive, the air that we breathe. Everything has a flavor from here and from there. Just 10 days from the first Mexican woman takes presidency in Mexico, and from interviews are looking favorable for a female candidate for president in the United States. The question is, what's our destiny? Are we further away or closer than the tense climate that we have in the country? And what's the paper of art, culture in breaking walls and borders? So this book, the name is Homeland.
Carlos Gonzalez Gutierrez is in the chapters, and so I think that this book needs to be 5 friends, 2 countries. And the major reason that I am here and this book was written was because of the influence of Carlos. A few years ago, quite a few, I'm not going to tell you how many, but it was during that time, I knew someone in Diplomat who just came back from Los Angeles, and he had studied at USC, and he wanted to go to the US, and I just got back from the US to Mexico, and I felt that there was a defect in me to be pocho, because even though I was born in Mexico, I grew up in California and US and later in El Paso, but Carlos was the first person that took me, that made me feel welcome in Mexico. and that the things were defects, and even though they were, really they are your power, your superpowers, and the fact that you can be here and there. And so for me, Carlos Gonzalez Gutierrez was a bridge between the two countries. And so we have been following the career. He was in Mexico, I was in Mexico, and then all of a sudden we were in Washington. And so I would like to read a summary of this anecdote. We are in Washington. Was in the Fox? And the president was just named in Mexico, and that was the first meeting in between Fox and the President Bush. And so I waited with the press between U.S. and U.S. in the monument of Washington, and that it was shining in the background. And I saw that Carlos, the young diplomat of the Mexico, and he said that while I was so quiet, and I tried to read in my mind, and I was joking a little bit with him, but he asked me to concentrate, and he warned me, pay attention, man. This could be very juicy for you. Bush started to present his friend Fox, and he said that the U.S. does not have no relation that is so important as the one that the U.S. has with Mexico, and the Mexican that had pronounced in a marked accent, but with total formality to be able to transmit his point, and who has a good neighbor has a good friend. And later Bush invited Fox to say some words to the press, and the Fox declared the following: it has gone to the point to let the migrants the place that correspond to the history of the bilateral relations, and both countries need both, and to do a migratory agreement that we would have before the respective mandates to make sure that no Mexican in the United States that has not come in a way that those Mexicans that have come to this country, they do it with the adequate documents. And I looked at Carlos, and I gave something, and at the end, this hope, it ended the next day in the Take of the Horse, where Carlos is finally going to Mexico, and I followed him. And so since then, the two countries, I've seen the hate grow, and that is the only thing that's left that we have of hope, even though the culture is continuing to integrate. It's how can we fight against the fights and the walls and during this, and I know that I'm putting a lot of pressure on you, but how can the culture and so that is me being Pocho. We're in Pocho land. And so I'm going to say this answer in English because my official language is Spanglish. And of my Spanish, hello, my name is Anita Herrera. Nice to meet you.
about the trauma from Primer Impacto. You know?
From First
We're
Impact.
definitely not from the same country. We're not from the same culture. We grew up quite differently. And through time, I developed this series called Diaspora Dialogues, and it's called Diaspora because I'm from the diaspora in Los Angeles. And it's a dialogue because it's an art installation based in a conversation that has no right or wrong answer. And it's the intention for us to find healing, empathy, and connection through mediums that don't require language. And so the reason why I did that is because this series started in Mexico City. It needed to start in Mexico City because I wanted to finally express like who I was and where I came from in Mexico. So my friends and my family there. I have a cousin that lives there, but I wanted to express like this is who I am and this is my culture. And a question that I actually answered earlier was the connection to LA. So when I first went to Mexico City, a lot of my friends are like, wow, you grew up in LA, bro, like I love LA. And I'm like, yeah, but I think we're talking about two different LAs. You're talking about the tourists, like, oh, and it's cool. Like, I love LA. I'm born and raised in LA. Like, I will rep that till the day I die. Like, I love the West Side. Give me a little Beverly Hills. It's a really specific culture, and I grew up, mostly with the diaspora. Like I grew up, my dad is from Michoacan. I grew up people with Jalisco, Durango, Sinaloa, and we grew up in a very specific. We know because it's very, very specific culture. And when I would go to Mexico, they're like, I grew up in a in they used to call it, Little Mexico, Little TJ. They used to call it Chuntinten Park, and that's something. I mean, that's subject for another day of like working in the fashion industry, being from HP. That's another subject. But in Mexico City, I was like, this is how we grew up, So I was really specific about the details of this art installation, the music. So, Diaspora Dialects is all based in a memory. That's why the flyers are all black and white. That's why in the art installation that you'll see after the panel, I include pictures, family party photos from the community for us to be able to, celebrate who we are. And the installation, it's called A Tribute to Ali's Backyard, but it's also in Spanish or in Spanish, Un tributo a la cultura que nació de la diáspora. And the diaspora exists because of this imaginary line between Mexico and United States, although this part of the United States was Mexico. And and that culture was birthed out of what, like family separations, deportations, all of these issues, sending money back home. Like our families are separated. I go back to Michoacan. My cousins don't even understand me because like my Spanish is not 100%. And
How
then
do they treat you? I mean, what's the vibe like? Do they judge you? Are they open about it?
I mean, I'm the gringa of the, and my friends in Mexico City call me the gringa, and I get so mad. I'm like, please don't call me that. Like, because, for them, it's like in term of endearment because I'm their friend from LA. But to me, I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying so hard to improve my Spanish and which it has, even though I'm answering this in English. But, it's like I've tried so hard to make sure that I'm assimilating into the culture in Mexico, not as like an American person bringing in my own ideals. Like I'm here to be a part of your culture. But it's, and that again, that's another subject for another day, the gentrification in Mexico City. But, it's received well because it's received mixed because it's like for them, they're like calling me the gringa. But for me, I'm like, please don't call me that. But for them, it's like they're showing their love. And then even my cousins, like obviously we love each other and everything. But at the end of the day, I'm still their cousin from LA, you know? But that's what the art installation is meant to also celebrate, but also to have these conversations with no right or wrong answer. Because, for me, this is a conversation for everyone. And for me, this is like actually it's not even about me. It's about our community, but it's everybody's personal experiences go into our collective experience. So that's why, like, for me, the diaspora dialogues exist, because it's for everyone, and it's for us to find, again, healing, connection, empathy through mediums that don't require language, because not everybody's Spanish is perfect. Maybe we can't, connect with each other, but at least we can connect with each other through experiences, through art, through music, through fashion, and through the family party that you'll experience after the panel.
Can't wait. Vamos a hacer una interacción.
So we're going to have some interactions and for 10, 15 minutes, and then we're going to give you time so that you can participate and ask some questions. And so one of the questions that I would like to do to you and see who wants to respond in everything, it's a relation that is a vision, a polarization, walls, hate. But Mexico is number one partner, and China. And so the interaction, the changes that we have, like a state with Wisconsin, there are Michigan, there are not any Mexicans. And so can you imagine at any time, how can we change the climate between both countries? And what do we need to do so that there's another perspective between the two countries? Victor, you're looking at me looking like you want to talk. I'm learning about you, Alfredo, and I'm looking at you, and I'm going to give you a response a little bit. I would like to say hello to my niece, my favorite, whose name is in Los Angeles, whose name is Paloma, and she is here. And so there is something that happened that's important that we need to keep in mind for the future. And that is that there is around 1 million of boys and girls who were born in the United States, and actually they're currently in Mexico. No, they don't go to Mexico as adults, they go as kids. And they are in the schools of Mexico, like Lulu and Kename, who came 13 years ago. In Arkansas, and later on in California. And so in the future, we're going to have a population that are Mexican and American at the same time. And so Anita probably is a dual citizen, Alfredo dual citizen, but they did not pass their childhood in the two countries. And that is the difference. And that is what is happening. A part of their childhood in the United States, and another part still as kids in Mexico. And so they're binational by law, and they're bilingual, like Irasema and Alfredo and Anita and
not even my children that are bilingual, they're not bicultural. In order to be bicultural, it requires to feel at home when I'm in the United States, and to feel equally at home when you're in Mexico. So between both countries, I feel at home. I've come to the U.S., the United States, hundreds of times, but I don't feel at home. I always feel, like a foreigner, like I'm visiting. I always feel like there's things that I do not understand. And that happens to somebody that grows up in the United States and arrives in Mexico and doesn't feel at home, right? There's things that you don't understand. The familiarity comes with childhood spent. So in this case, as far as demographers, 3 or 4 million Mexicans, American Mexicans, by right. No, there's no wall that can be built for that. That is an American. right? With a passport, United States passport, they enter into the United States. And with a Mexican passport, they can enter Mexico. So it's a generation that has both, that is accustomed to both countries. Between 3 and 4 million of Americans that are Mexican in a future that are bicultural, not monocultural. They are bicultural because they spend part of their childhood in this country and part of their childhood in the other country. That is my response. And what impact are these children having in their communities in Mexico? How are they adapting? And how's the country getting adapting to their presence? So I have members from both countries.
No welcome responses. They are not welcoming. Ni en Estados Unidos,
Not in the United States, nor in Mexico. So we're fighting for schools, Mexican schools, to receive them, and have them feel welcomed. And if their first language is English, usually because, they grew up here. So let's start saying the following. The most important poet, the Nahuatl language, alive, not the one that's already passed, the live, Natandro Hernandez is his name. For me, it's an honor that he considers me his friend. And that poet told me once, don't say indigenous languages, don't say original languages or mother tongues. Let's say Mexican language. They're all Mexican languages. Spanish is a Mexican language. Natalia, how about English? Because your kids are speaking English. Yes, that as well. We declare English is a Mexican language as well. We'll declare that. So I love Natal's answer. Last point. Those parents, they weren't deported to Mexico, right? They decided to return to Mexico. I have 1,500 children is the information, the data that I've collected. Only 322 told me because my father or mother was deported. The rest of this is because we wanted to live together in Mexico. The reason why they are in Mexico is to live together. We don't want to live separately. And the easiest image is family. Family in San Diego tells mom and dad to their 4 daughters born here, look, your uncle so-and-so was deported. That could happen to us. So, to your father and myself, they told their daughters. So, and he said, let's get out of here. Let's go live together in Cuernavaca. That's the answer. We want to live together. The state is aggregating the migrant families. They're separating them. And migrant families are defending themselves, living together. We want to live together. So out of those 4 girls that are now adult, 1 returned to California and says, and the other 3 are still in Morelos. And they're binational. And honestly, they say, no, I don't want to live away from my family. Life is good here. It's very nice here. So we're going to start not only see that, but they're going to move. They're going to spend some time in the United States. Another time they're going to be in Mexico. So they're going to, take advantage of their double nationality. Julian does that as well. As he's bilingual, he is going to take advantage that he can move between both countries. My son Nicolas, the father of Nicolas, can't do that because he's Mexican. Well, I mean, he can. He could naturalize, right, as an American at some moment, and he'd be able to do that, right? I live in both countries with complete and utter right. I can vote for the lady and for the lady over here. You're jumping ahead. Oh, I jumped ahead. Anita.
I got my double nationality, so I actually
you are double national.
yeah, and that was a whole process, but I do consider and feel very grateful to even be able to have 2 passports. But yeah, I got my double nationality. So anyone out there, it's 1 or 2 parents born in Mexico, go do it. it could be a process, but it's really beautiful to say like you have double nationality. I voted in Mexico. I got my tax ID number. Taxes in both countries.
I have some follow-up questions for you, but Irasema?
No quiero aguadiar la fiesta, pero
I don't want to spoil the party, but a chapter in our book by Catherine Tesalowski, in the children in Oaxaca, she spoke with them that they were of deported parents. So these children share a lot of estrangement at school, a lot of bullying, mistreatment. They feel very alienated in a school that doesn't have the resources. Many of them had aspirations that they were going to play American football. They were going to go to homecoming. They were going to go to prom. And all of those dreams were over because the family decided they deported the mother, deported the father, both of them, and they said, we're all leaving. So in that same chapter, they tell the story, a lack of family dynamic, because these children, they're upset, they're bothered. Why did they have to change my life so radically? I don't want to be here. I don't like it. I want to return. And many would say in the interviews that when they were 18 years old, they were going to return to the United States. So to answer your question, what did you do previously? I just went to Nogales, Arizona yesterday, on Thursday. I took 13 journalists, international journalists, to the border. And we met with lots of local workers there. And it's a model of cooperation binational. They understand the importance of about Mexicans that come, that buy things in the United States. They help the economy. They understand the benefit that the Mexican economy provides to a lot of Americans and Mexicans that go see doctors, that go to the pharmacies, that go buy certain services and products that are cheaper in Mexico. So that interdependency, economic dependency, that being able to co-live daily on board the towns are a model for both countries of how to get along, how to respect each other, how to have a more harmonious relationship. Oscar Martinez, he's a teacher as well, professor. He writes of an integrated border and a border that's interdependent. And the local communities in El Paso, Juárez, Tijuana, San Diego, Laredo, New Laredo, Nogales, there's an interdependency that's strong. And municipal presidents highlighted that when they interviewed or were interviewed by the journalists. We know how to get along, how to help the federal government for them to understand that they need to allow us to have this interaction and to be a model for the country, and how to be harmonious. Jose Martinez is completely right. But I'm going to add, with regard to the hostile environment in which the children that come from the United States and arrive in Oaxaca and Puebla, that doesn't happen in Zacatecas, Nuevo León, Jalisco, Guanajuato. It does not happen in Morelos. It's something that is so strange. It's Oaxaca and Puebla where this happened. It's anti-Yankee attitude, and these children are suffering, the schools in Oaxaca and the schools of Puebla. So there's a question that we asked the students of Jalisco, Nuevo León, Zacatecas, Morelos, Oaxaca, Puebla. The question was, for those that had never been in the United States, okay, children in school, the children that come from the United States that are at the schools, are they the same or different than you? In Zacatecas, 99% said they're the same as me. In Nuevo León, 97% said they're exactly like me. They're just like me. Puebla and Oaxaca, only 20% said they are just like me. It's so strange that in two states with so much indigenous presence, there's such a feeling that's Yankee, anti-American. So it's not, it's regional, it's not national, that the attitude. We'd have to see Mexico City, how that goes. For me, for Mexico City is like a small LA, right? It's all lots of people from East Los. When I met with them,
Good to see you, girl. I mean, it was such a welcoming experience for them. It was wonderful. Yeah, pero ahí tiene su little México ahí.
so they've got their little Mexico there. The fact that you're bicultural, binational, how does that?
How does being binational, bicultural enrich your life? I mean, how is Anita before Mexico? How is Anita before discovering Roma in Calle Colima?
In Calle Colima, in comparison to who she is today?
That's a really interesting question. But I mean, I feel really grateful for my life experience to be able to have been able to have an opportunity to live in Mexico and obviously be born and raised in LA. But I'm also very conscious about my presence in Mexico City, just because I moved there in 2018. There's a beetle. Can you see it? It's actually but I was actually working there and going back quite often before. Oh my gosh, doesn't that mean good luck?
Yes,
It doesn't.
definitely good luck. It wants
Yay.
to take you home to Mexico.
Yay. But obviously, Mexico City is quite different than Michoacan. So my dad is from Michoacan, and Mexico City is, a completely different place, different experience. I went there without my family because I went there with. The first time I went was with my mentor I mentioned earlier, Toy Selecta, and he's a music producer from Monterrey, so my experience going to Mexico City without my family in a it was much different. Like for me, it was like a whole new universe open for me, a whole chapter of my life open for me, and my decision to move to Mexico City was a decision that I made because of more opportunities I was getting there. But like I said, I've also moved with caution. Just because Mexico City now, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows it's like highly gentrified. Again, going back to my efforts to assimilate, to improve my Spanish, to get my double nationality, to live there legally, to pay my taxes is definitely not what others are doing in Mexico City. So I also have, my own resistance towards what's happening because I'm like, if I work so hard to live there with my papeles, because I have my life experience in living in United States in this whole, racist discrimination experience here because of not having the papeles and having your family members be considered illegal aliens and all of this. My life experience made me live in a more cautious way in Mexico City. And when I have talked to my friends from Mexico, they don't understand my life experience in LA because to them it's like, not to all of them, some of them, but unless your family experienced immigration, then you'll have a certain understanding. But not all of my friends' families, experience that because, their families are, they were able to stay in Mexico, so they don't understand why, most of them have never even been to Michoacan, so like they also don't understand that life experience. So I did go to Mexico City, like definitely with, more caution and more I guess just with the that I wanted to assimilate and I wanted to adapt rather than the other way around. So I hope that answers that question.
Yes.
And we have a few minutes for questions, please. Your name? Thank you. I'm Gusto Padillo, and I'm the president of the foundation of the University of Guadalajara. And we, University of Guadalajara, we are the second biggest in the country university, and one of the things that we have done is yourself. So we would like to congratulate Zócalo first of all for the awesome initiative that you have brought to us and to talk about a very critical issue. And that is a question that I'm supposed to do and not a participation. And so if we had to do a participate, because it's been 20 years that I've been working in the binational agenda migration in terms of superior education. And you are right, because we have not been able to have a political binational educational and culture. And so it's time that we work harder, continue to work harder, because there's something that I've seen is that we see at the University of Guadalajara, for the Mexicans, for the days out in the exterior, and it's very important to see the youngsters, the Mexican Americans who go back to and go to Mexico. And so my question, and so I promise to work with you in that agenda at the federal level and at the state level as well. But in my question, do you have experience with federal organizations, entities that have been with you when Mexican American go back to Mexico? Have you had any good practices? I would like to know them, or experience. I've had wonderful experiences. I've taken many Mexican American students for the first time that they got on an airplane. We went to Ciudad Juarez in Mexico, and I'm going to give the experience that we have. One, we knew the author Manuel Nova, and so we went to the community Mipa Alta, and where we gave instructions about Nopal and living, and we went to UNAM, we went to Serenat, we went to organizations for women. It changed their life, and the students. And so I would like to continue doing this, and obviously the cost, the insurance, and taking so many people, it was easier for me because of UNAM, and they gave us a car for that, or a bus for that, but it changed the lives of the students. And that has been 20 years ago, and they still tell me that experience in Mexico changed my life in a good way. And so I believe in that. And I would also like to be able to Mexican universities, that your students come. I know that there's an issue with the insurance, medical insurance, visa, the costs to be living. It's not easy, but if we could have some experiences that are for short term, so that they're not, for the whole semester, but they're for a few weeks. And so that would help strengthen our programs. And so Arizona State, we are committed to exchanges of students and teachers.
I'll be fast, but I have had, a great experience going to Mexico City. With the friends that I've made have, obviously opened their arms to me and have accepted me as a, the Pocha girl from LA. But, I've learned a lot from them, and I've also unlearned a lot. I grew up in the United States, and obviously in the United States, our culture is quite selfish, quite, it's very individualistic. So when I went to Mexico City, I learned a new way to live, and it's like, it's community, it's your, even though we have those values here, you still go to school in the United States, and you're still taught to be super selfish, super individualistic. And when I went to Mexico, I was like, this is the way to live, where it's about your community, it's about your friends, it's about well-being, it's about a different life. So I actually had to unlearn a lot of, I guess you could say, just United things that come with growing up in the United States. And I am very grateful for my experience, and I'm grateful to all my friends in Mexico City. And I'll say it over again, grateful to Toy Selecta. Hopefully he'll listen to this, or anybody that's from Monterrey and knows his contribution to Latino music and him crossing borders from United States and Mexico. But he opened the door for me to also have that opportunity to create bridges and, and create, and to celebrate culture that transcends borders.
Victor, yes, congratulations to the University of Guadalajara because that is an institution that has promoted these types of exchanges. And so, congratulations to you. And a few ideas that I would like to emphasize strongly. The kids that were born in the United States, they are youth, they don't go back to Mexico. They come to the first time. They do not know Mexico. They come for the first time. And so they are not people that have returned. They returned to the US. And so that the United Universities of Mexico, we are following that those who come who are 12, 13, 14, and now they're 20 years old. And a very interesting strategy that is being developed is to study superior education in Mexico with the impressive cost that the US has at the University of Guadalajara in Nayarit. Those are the ones that have said, come and study. Come studying veterinary, civil engineering, etc. The different fields, the careers that are not difficult to develop in the United States, like these ones that I said, are administration, linguistics, education, etc. And the private and public ones, both of them, they need to open their door for them to the binational Mexicans or United Americans binational. Open your doors for the education, because superior education is very expensive. And so the option is exactly University of Guanajuato, Nayarit, Guadalajara, where I live in Monterrey. I'm sorry.
Team Regio, the Regios open their doors to me.
Open your doors. Open the doors to that generation, the generation 0.5. That is what we call them because they have been in the U.S. and they are being in the U.S. They're second generation. When they come young, they're 0.5. When they come as adults, they're first generation. And what happens when they go to Mexico? And so they're not 0.5. They are not second generations. So that is why we call them 0.5 generation. Zero.
Borders from the United States to Mexico. So you are a member of the 1.5 generation.
Oh, 1.5. I just wanted to add that when I did Diaspora Dialogues Family Party in Mexico City, over 80 people flew from LA to Mexico City for the party. That wasn't, Frankie's here. He was there. He wrote about it at NPR, actually. Hey, it was actually a lot of people's first time going to Mexico or Mexico City. And that's from the generation, our community here. So I think that's something to say about people are, they're having opportunities to explore who they are through these experiences as well, going to Mexico for the first time or going to Mexico City for the first time.
Yo también quiero dar
Me too. I would like to congratulate Zúñiga at University of Guadalajara for that vision, the binational vision. I had a magnificent experience because of my mentor Carlo Gonzalez Gutierrez, and with the consulate. We need to have more institutions. I know that there is another question. No, we're out of time. Thank you so much. Thank you for Zócalo Public Square, the University of Guadalajara, LéaLA for presenting this program. You'll be able to find a summary of the program on Zócalo's website in the coming days, as well as interviews with all the panelists. And please remember to subscribe to Zócalo's newsletter, podcast, social media for more great conversations. And we now invite our in-person audience to continue the conversation at a special reception and Diaspora Dialogues Family Party This is a art installation by Anita Herrera. Thank you again. I know that it is early on a Saturday, but you came, and let's go forward. Thank you. And the reception is at the other side of this wall.